Hey everyone, I'm Father Alexander,
And I'm Father David Marshall.
and this is a bridge between where we are bridging coming back from spring break, and we're bridging the gospel this week. And what else are we bridging, Dave?
Life and death.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we've got a very special gospel. It's the last Sunday in Lent, which means a great deal. And what's the gospel we
Wait a
have
minute.
for today?
Is this really the last Sunday of Lent? Because you're not, because that means Palm Sunday isn't a part of Lent.
Palm Sunday is a part of Holy Week.
Oh, nice. So you don't count that as Lent.
Well, I was taught it was its own liturgical season.
Okay. But if you, let's say, I don't know, gave up M&Ms for Lent, does that mean on Palm Sunday you can start eating them?
Well, actually, from a technical standpoint, because every Sunday is a feast day,
Every Sunday is a feast day, right? It
I
doesn't
can
count.
have some of those M&Ms.
Sure. Right. And if you say some, and you mean a handful, no,
Well,
more than
I shouldn't be having more than a handful of M&Ms, and this is going to quickly get out of hand here.
it is. It is.
Uh,
So
so so it is a part of Lent, but I think when we talk about the last Sunday of Lent, it's a designation that we give for these types of readings, and then Palm Sunday is a special Sunday within that Lenten calendar.
right. So it's the David S. Pumpkins of the entire season. It's its own thing, Palm Sunday.
Yes, it is.
Did you get the David S. Pumpkins? And if you don't know what that is, please Google. It's one of the best skits they've ever done on Saturday Night Live. It is awesome. And if you have a comment about it, just attach that comment onto the David S. Pumpkins suit jacket and send it to me. And I will wear the jacket and read the comment. You know the jacket I'm
Hey,
talking about, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will Google it myself and I will leave a comment on our own video.
You have not seen the David S. Pumpkins Halloween?
Nope.
Oh my gosh, Alex.
I'm a very
Wow.
sheltered person, I know.
All right. So, folks, this tells you we record these things live. We would have edited this out, but this wasn't a part of what we were going to talk about. David S. Pumpkins is his own thing. I will stop saying his name. We're going to keep going. So, because we're not talking about Palm Sunday, we're talking about the fifth Sunday of Lent, which some would say is the final Sunday of Lent.
In Lent.
Good.
So we have the story of the raising of Lazarus. And there's a distinction that I want to make because I was reading an ebook or an article about this that was sent by a Christian organization, and it talks about the resurrection of Lazarus.
Hmm.
It's not the resurrection of Lazarus.
Okay.
It's the raising of Lazarus. I would call it the resuscitation of
Reanimation.
Lazarus because Lazarus still died eventually later on.
Right.
Jesus is the first person to be resurrected. I mean, is that accurate or?
I would like to think that if Lazarus was still alive, we would know it. I'm pretty
That's
sure.
what I think. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I don't think
That
he's hiding.
um right. That's a fascinating idea. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about that this morning before you and I started talking about it, of like they never recorded when he died. And like, did they wait 5 days? Because the thing, folks, in the lesson is that he's been dead for 4 days when Jesus
Right.
arrives. And the important thing about four is that in Zoroastrianism, never thought we'd bring that up today. They believe that the soul hovers around the body for 3 days. And so day four would be dead as a doornail day. That would be gone, gone, definitely gone day. And the reading even has a stench that like coming. And so that type of dead.
And I like to draw the distinction between resuscitation and resurrection because Jesus was not merely resuscitated. It's not resuscitation Sunday, it's resurrection Sunday. And there is a difference that maybe we'll either talk about today or talk about when we talk about Easter.
Yeah, or maybe even on Palm Sunday.
Yeah, even on Palm Sunday.
Yeah, that's very intriguing.
So for
So
those who may not be fully familiar with the story, let's talk about what happened. So, well, how does it start out?
it starts with Jesus and the disciples are not near Bethany. and word comes to them from Mary and Martha, who are the sisters of a man named Lazarus, and they send a message, and they get it to Jesus. And I love this message, because if anybody remembers, telegraphs, they have to be really short. And the message is this: Lord, he whom you love is ill. That's it. Lord, he
Wow.
whom you love is ill. Um, so I guess they charged by the word or letter back then, for that type of, and I often wonder, like, how did the message get there? And was it on a horseback? Did somebody run it? How did you find where Jesus is? It's intriguing to me. Like, how long did it take that message to get there? But that's just me. I just start to wonder about the actual physical side of how did they send messages back then.
Yeah,
But
I get
yeah,
into that sometimes too. If I try to go down a biblical rabbit hole, I'll say to myself, like, how did they find where Jesus was? You know.
right, right. So
And
Jesus
so
then
yeah, go ahead.
he stayed 2 days longer where he was. He got the message, waited 2 more days. And then when he and the disciples, when they finally arrived in Bethany, which is, from what I understand, 2 miles outside of Jerusalem,
Mhm.
that when they finally arrived there, Lazarus was dead. He'd been dead for 4 days, and he was in a tomb. So the funeral's over, the whole reception after the funeral's over, the whole party had died down, and the reality of their brother being dead had fully set in when Jesus arrived. Do you want to take it from there, or do you want me to keep going?
And then of course Jesus comes back, and Martha and Mary, have some questions for Jesus. Martha, of course, says, I think, with deep grief and sorrow, not even waiting for Jesus to get there, but going there and saying, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. This kind of confession of Jesus's identity of having power,
Mm-hmm.
of being a healer.
Yeah,
If you'd been here, you could have healed him. What, as if implying, why didn't you?
right, right, right. I like to think of it as some sort of reoccurring illness that he had, and that when he was around Jesus, he wasn't sick, and then when Jesus would leave, he would get sick again. That's intriguing all by itself. Um, Yet Martha said, after that, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. She said, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him.
Yeah.
And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?
Now, what's really important is what Jesus just said there, aside from the do you believe this,
Mhm.
is part of the opening of our funeral liturgy in the Book of Common Prayer.
It is. Yes.
And I love that opening sequence comes straight from Scripture.
It's great. It's also one of my favorite camp songs. I am resurrection and the life. Um, oh, and actually, it is also a part. Without grabbing my prayer book, when we deal with the ashes, when we put them in the ground or put them into a wall,
Yeah.
everyone who comes to me, oh boy, sick. I don't have it memorized.
Is everyone who the Father brings to me will come to me, and I
Yeah,
will never turn them away.
I will never turn away anybody who, yeah, that whole idea um, of welcome in with this type of phrase. So, and then do you believe this? And which is a great question. Then what did Mary do?
Well, Mary also encounters Jesus, and um, when Mary came and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, well, it was Mary who said, Lord, if you had not been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, the Jews who came with her were also weeping. He was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved, which means Jesus actually has real human emotions,
Yeah.
and asks, where have you laid him?
Mm-hmm.
And so they go out to the tomb area. And I've been to Bethany, and they, of course, in Israel, they always do the thing, well, that's where that thing
Mm-hmm.
is.
Right.
And they showed us a tomb from that era. And it's very interesting that when you go in, you see these kind of shelves of where bodies were when they found it and excavated it. And you think to yourself, being inside of a tomb was just so frightening.
Mhm.
And then, of course, Jesus, he speaks to the Father, acknowledging God's power and presence. And then he calls Lazarus out by name. And Lazarus comes out.
And his hands and feet were bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go.
And I think what's so important here is no one in the story, right? None of the characters, of course, besides Jesus, has any expectation of Lazarus coming back to life.
Right.
You don't bury somebody who's going to come back to life. You don't bind them. You don't wrap them. You don't do all those things if you believe they're going to come back to life.
Yeah. Yeah. And the place where he was put, they put you there for, from what I've read, 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go back in, they collect the bones,
Yeah.
and they put the bones in a container.
An ossuary.
Yeah, thank you. And then they hold on to that. That this was the ancient form of burial. And so yeah, they fully expected him to go back 11 months later, and to the reason why they bind it together with these strips of cloth is so that they can easily remove it. Yeah.
So I think, and the reason I like that this is in the fifth Sunday of Lent, or the last Sunday of Lent, however you want to call it, is because Jesus is demonstrating power over life and death. And to me, this is a tremendous foreshadowing of Jesus laying down his life and then having his life be given back to him by God.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This story, for those that are in church on Sunday, the first one we hear is from Ezekiel. And Ezekiel, the prophet, has a vision, and he sees what I think is an ancient battlefield of where the Syrians wiped out the northern Israelite army. And he sees the dead bones, the dry bones lying on the ground, and he prophesies, and they come back to life. That the idea is that God is saying, I created all this. You can't break it so much that I can't restore it. There's no way you can break these things so badly that I can't bring them back. And I love that idea of God, that also in John, Jesus telling the people, I can lay my life down and I can pick my life back up. That again, the creator of all these things can do these things. What is impossible to us is not impossible to God.
And I love the Valley of the Dry Bones and what you just said right now about nothing being so broken that God can't fix it, because when I was actually in South Carolina, I'll tell a little story on Father Dan. As we were getting ready for church that Sunday, he was just kind of in that rush that clergy do, turning on lights and setting things up. And as he was walking by, he touched a light switch, and down fell this cruet full of wine.
Oh boy.
And of course it broke.
Yeah,
And
of course.
Of course I took a picture because I wanted to remember it. But it has this idea of, we're so afraid of breaking things. We're so afraid of being broken. And one of the things I remember thinking about in that moment is, it's okay. It's just a cruet.
Mhm.
It's just a thing that's glass that holds wine. You've got another one. When we're broken, it's okay. Not because God has a spare, but because God can say, I can put you back together in ways and restore you in ways that you don't even understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think during Lent, when we get emphasized this message of sin and brokenness, if we're not careful, we can forget to tell people about the redemption aspect, that God says, yes, you have sinned, but I am going to put you back together again. And that's one of the reasons that my favorite service of the year, kind of getting ahead of ourselves, is the vigil. because some of those stories are in there of God saying, I'll create a new heart. I will do these things that put things back together.
Yeah. And the heart of those Old Testament readings for the vigil is the Ezekiel dry bone story.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a centerpiece right in there. We start with ashes and God forming humans, and then we have dry bones, and then it's awesome. So out in front of my office, well, in front of all angels, we have these oak trees, and the folks, the botanists that I went to a Benedictine university, so my professor was also the abbot um, of the monastery there, being a botanist. And he would say that God has this fascinating approach of building things, breaking them down, of building things, of breaking them down. And he said, it was in Washington State. So he said, look at all these fir trees. One of these days, every single fir tree will be lying on the ground, dead. It will be absorbed into the ground. New fir trees will come out of that God just has this constant way of taking old things, breaking them down, having new things come up, that God is just, in again, the abbot's words, fascinated with taking things that are dead and making them alive again. And so it's an interesting idea of God to see that. And our lives are so short, especially in comparison to some of these fir trees,
Right.
that we don't see that entire cycle. But God does that.
And I'm going to take it one step further, which is God does that and creates a system of that because God sees value in the tree.
Amen. Yeah.
And so if, as Jesus would say, if the birds of the air, are important to God,
Yeah.
what about you? So God values us so much that he seeks to renew us and restore us and rebuild us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make an older reference here. I remember that show, The $6 Million Man.
Oh, Steve Austin. I had an action figure and everything. Yeah.
We can rebuild him. And I just laugh because do you know like how little you could get for $6 million right now?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's one knee surgery, right? I mean,
it'd be like the $6 trillion man.
It would be a $6 trillion man, right? My dad never liked that show. My dad being the biology teacher, because he's like, they never fixed his back. There's no way that his arm can pick his because Steve Austin picked up a car with his arm, which was bionic, and Dad's like, his back and his hips would just snap just immediately. Right?
It's like, don't worry about it, Dad. It's just a show.
Right?
It's just a show.
Just run with it. Yeah.
But the thing is that to what extremes will God go to restore?
Mm.
You know what they are. Well, he'll go to send his son.
He will. And he will call us all by name.
Yeah, and that's one of the most powerful sermons that I'd ever heard about was one of my Jesuit professors from back in the day, and he said that he had preached a funeral for a young lady who had committed suicide,
mm-hmm.
and of course it was absolutely tragic, everything that had happened, but at the end he called her by name and said, "Come out."
Yeah.
And that was it. To say that God is still going to call her by name.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, if that's true for her, that's true for all of us.
It's true for all of us. We started this whole Lenten season with the assertion that God so loved the world that he sent his only son, mm-hmm. and not to condemn the world, but to save it.
Yep.
And then John has been proving to us with the woman at the well,
mm-hmm.
With the man born blind.
Yep.
And then the deadbeat brother who dies before his sisters are taken care of. I know you don't hear that much about Lazarus, but let's be honest, right?
Maybe Lazarus had a comprehensive insurance plan with the locals.
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of grief here, right? There's just a lot of ending with that, and Jesus could have condemned him, right? And we don't know what he died of, so
But Jesus still says,
"Come out,
come out."
Called him by name, and proving that point that Jesus is not here to condemn. Jesus is here to save.
So, so I would say that as we look ahead to Holy Week, we're probably going to talk a great deal about some of those days that are key to Holy Week, like Palm Sunday, Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, the Great Vigil, and of course, Easter Sunday. And I encourage everyone, please look at your local church's schedule and try to go to as many of those days as is possible, because you need to get the whole story. You don't just need to get one day, you need to get the week's worth of the story, because it adds so much meaning.
It does. It really adds into your spiritual life. If you're to attend to a Maundy, Thursday service, go to a Good Friday service, attend an Easter Vigil Saturday night, be out there with the fire, attend Sunday morning. It is a money back guarantee that you will get something out of this. In fact, the more that you put into it, the more that you get out of it.
So I'll leave you with this. And this is how, when I was in college, a Catholic monk explained to me why you need to go to Holy Week, why it's the best week of the year. Okay. On Palm Sunday, you get a free palm, right?
Yeah, right.
On Maundy, Thursday, you get a free foot wash.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Forgot about that.
Plus, they used real bread. So you get real bread on communion on Maundy, Thursday.
You bet.
Good Friday, not a very well attended service, so plenty of seating. Right. And then Easter Vigil, you might get a candle.
Oh, yeah, you might.
So there you go. And then Easter morning, you get an egg.
You get an egg. You bet.
So there's, guys, it's there for you.
It's all waiting, and jump in. So next week, Palm Sunday, we are going to attempt to build a bridge, which is bridging Holy Week. Well, sorry, bridging Lent to Easter.
Yeah.
And Palm Sunday is the bridge.
Exactly. So let's bring the hard hats and the materials.
Yeah, and the engineering ideas and the wire, and we'll see where we go.
All right. Well, Dave, it was good spending this time with you.
Nice spending time with you too, Alex.
And thanks, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
God bless.
God bless.